Hey guys, what's up? This is Subtle Roy, and I'm going to be doing a discussion on support itemization in Season 5. I think the last patch that went down was 4.21, and there's going to be some new AP items, so all these things are subject to change, but I think support is one of the hardest roles to itemize, so I think it's really good to talk about itemization as a support and teaching people the schools of thought behind itemization, because a lot of the times when people look up a build, they have absolutely no idea why they're going that build. They're just building it because they've had success with the build. They don't actually know why someone would tell you to build those things. So I'm going to be talking about backs. I'm going to be talking up to the second full item. How many backs this is going to take is entirely subjective, but just so you guys have a bit of a reference frame for what's going on. Okay, so every support starts by buying one of the support items generally. Back in Season 3, I don't know how many people played in Season 3, supports would only start pots and wards. That was the start. Things have changed since then. You need to get the gold generation item or else you're going to fall behind in lane the majority of the time. Not all of the time. Some people do a ruby crystal start, which I forgot to put, if you're rushing a sightstone, which is totally fine, because there's nothing wrong with that start. But this is the start I like to go. So you can start Relic Shield, the tank item. Generally only go this on melee or Thresh, because they're the only ones that really take advantage of it. Other ranged champions can go Relic Shield, but it's not worth it. Go Spell Thief's Edge if you are a mage and you can benefit from having the extra AP, because it does give less gold generation. This is really like Morgana, Zyra, Lulu, Janna, anyone who can take advantage of extra AP. And Ancient Coin, which is really, if you're going to be stuck in a farm lane or you're not going to be able to kill the enemy bot lane, you go Ancient Coin. So Soraka will generally go Ancient Coin. Anyone who has fairly punishing mana costs and needs the extra movement speed in lane, because this upgrades into what's it? Nomad's Medallion, which does give movement speed. It's really nice. Okay, so there's that, and you have the choice of buying either a ward, and I think it's one pot, or no ward and several pots. I think you can do without the ward. I generally don't buy a ward start unless there's something that desperately needs to be warded in the early game, like if you're playing against a Shaco and you need the extra ward. But even then you can just coordinate your level 1 wards and it's not quite as bad. So on my first back, I generally buy Moby Boots if I need to roam and need the mobility, and Sightstone. I buy one or the other almost every game. And basically the job of a support is to create vision and create picks. Everything comes from those two jobs. So the vision part is the Sightstone and the picks part is Boots of Mobility. Even in lane, Boots of Mobility are such a huge help. You don't realize it until you start rushing it, but they are the best boots in the game for a support, and especially a roaming support. But roaming is kind of a bit of a high-level concept that takes some time to get used to. And then we have the Vision Ward, which everyone should buy Vision Wards. Everyone. The ADC, the jungler, the mid laner, but what usually ends up happening is only the support buys one, and it ends up getting stuck bot lane. So be creative. If you're doing well bot lane, stick the Vision Ward in the little dot brush in the river. If you're not doing so well, save the Pink Ward tri-brush, or your side of the river. And health and mana pots. Health and mana pots are the difference between winning lane and losing lane. That's just as simple as that. You always buy health and mana pots every back. Okay, now the second back is generally when you upgrade your support gold generation item, and also, I forgot to put this, but when you buy boots. So we're just going to add boots in there. I know I have Moby Boots here, but I didn't put boots in the first slot, so this is when you generally buy boots, is first or second back. So I'm going to put this in here too. And you want to buy items that stack or items that give you mana early in the game, because in lane is generally when you're going to be using the most mana. Later in the game, you're just kind of going to be standing around and waiting for team fights, which is pretty much the mid and late game, so you won't necessarily need as much mana generation. Depending on what champion you're playing, there are more mana-hungry supports than others. Soraka being one of them, Blitzcrank being another one. Anyone who has high mana cost generally benefits from a Chalice, and it builds into an amazing support item, so there's no real way to go wrong. And because the cost of an upgraded sweeper went down, so the general progression of your trinkets is always going to go like this for every support game you play until Riot changes things. You're going to start with your warding totem right here. You're going to get your sightstone and switch to a sweeper, because now that you have a sightstone you don't need the warding totem. And then you're going to upgrade the 250 gold oracle's lens at around level 9, which is when you can use it. You can't upgrade it before anyway, so as soon as you hit level 9, there's no reason not to upgrade this anymore. It's incredibly cheap. And the rest of these are the tier 2 upgrades of your support item, which are generally just better. They generate more gold, they have better stats, so they're worth upgrading. And don't forget to buy pink wards, because pink wards are very important. Okay. So the first full item you get, or near full item, because I have a few things here that aren't full items, is going to be dictated based on what kind of support you want to be. Magi's is generally good if you're what I like to call a utility mage. So utility mages like to build AP because they scale off of AP. Usually they have like a shield or something, but they don't necessarily need magic penetration or anything else. So the people who would build Magi's would be pretty much anyone with a shield or a heal. So Soraka, Janna, Lulu, I was going to say Taric, but I haven't seen a Taric in so long, I don't think that even... I guess Alistar could build a Magi's if he was ever so inclined, but usually you play Alistar as a tank, so can't say I recommend that. And then the other thing you can build is a Crucible. Crucible is... Think of Crucible like this. If League of Legends were Monopoly, Crucible is a get-out-of-jail-free card for your AD carry. Every time he gets CC'd, he gets stunned, especially in lower elo. If you get good with Crucible, you can save ADCs from so many stupid situations, it's not even funny. It's an amazing item that rewards your ability to react to what's going on. And it's definitely worth getting every game. I love Crucible. Aegis of the Legion is another good item to finish because it buffs your entire team. So what I say is, if there's a big AoE wombo combo-y team, like let's say a Lysandra or a Karthus or something, you're basically obligated to get an Aegis of the Legion because it buffs your entire team. And it's just a super useful item. It's always going to be a super useful item. 20 magic resist among all your teammates means by you buying this, you're buying everyone a null magic mantle, essentially. That's what that means. And they get extra base health regen, which even though it doesn't seem like much in a siege, makes a big difference. Or like an extended dragon fight. Okay, Morellonomicon is another really good purchase. This is more in line with the utility mage I was talking about. I don't think that this is as useful in the full DPS build. Did I end up putting this in the utility mage builds? I don't know if I did. I can swap out, yeah. I can swap that out for the Morellonomicon. Let's do that. Let's see. Utility mage. Okay. Okay, I think we're good to go now. So, some other things. Frozen Heart is really good in lane. I generally only build it on tanks. And utility tanks, which is a term that I'll explain in a little bit. Ionian boots are a great purchase if you're playing a support that thrives on CDR, like Thresh or Braum or anyone else really. Just supports do great with CDR. And even though you might go over the CDR cap, if you have your CDR capped at 40 earlier in the game, you get to ult more, which makes a big difference for your team. So let's see. And Haunting Guy's Sork Shoes is sort of the combo if you're going to go with DPS support. And I say DPS support, what I really mean is a support whose goal is to do damage. You're essentially playing a carry support. And so this combination gives you the most bang for your buck, because early in the game, very few ADCs or bot lanes will build magic resist. So by building a Haunting Guys, you're effectively cutting their magic resist in half, and then cutting it again in half thanks to the Sork Shoes. So you're dealing near true damage if you build them early enough in the game, because of the way magic penetration works. And Ninja Tabi is just a good purchase if you're going a tanky support. Okay, and as for finishing your second full item, so I think at this point, since you already have your Sightstone, which I don't consider a full item, that's just a required purchase to be a support. And you probably already have your boots at this point. These are the things that I would recommend finishing. Finish your support item, first and foremost, because your support item, all three of them are very good at this point. They're amazing items. They really, each of them does their job very well. And if you're going an AP style support, I would say finish Zhonya's and Void Staff, because for a carry build, these are just amazing items. Zhonya's is an amazing item. I would take Zhonya's over Rabadon's if you're playing a support every game, unless you're literally stomping their teeth in which case, you know, it doesn't really matter what you build at that point, because you're going to win no matter what. And Locket is probably the most solid second item to finish, because it makes your team's ability to team fight that much stronger. It's a pretty sizable shield that increases with level, and it just gives a ton of buffs, you know, it's just a huge team-wide buff. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this concept, which is you can go a pure build, which is when you're essentially building as if you were that role with a Sightstone, or you can build what I like to call a utility version of other builds. Now, utility builds, they generally work around buffing the team or getting a certain item active for the team. So let me talk about the pure DPS build. So the pure DPS build, this is a build that I go all the time. It doesn't revolve around CDR whatsoever. It's mostly about nuking. It's a build that I like to go on Vel'Koz. You can absolutely swap out, say, the Zhonya's for a Morellonomicon or something. It's just, this is the build that I like to go. So it revolves around getting your Sork Shoes Haunting Guys for that early lane dominance. This is really good on Annie, by the way. And then from there, you finish your Frost Queen's Claim, finish your Leandries, maybe go into a Void Staff or Zhonya's, depending on what item you have, you know, you feel you need to build next. If you want to do more damage, you build the Void Staff. If you want to be a little bit more safe in team fights, you build the Zhonya's Hourglass. So this is what I like to call the pure DPS build, or the pure carry build. And it's generally reserved for supports that are capable of carrying. So Vel'Koz, Zyra, Morgana, Annie, Brand is another good one. I hate Brand support so much. Oh god, it's not fun to play against at all, but I digress. Okay, I think we can move on to the next build. So the next build is what I like to call just the pure tank build. It's fairly self-explanatory. You build both attack speed debuff items because you want people to be beating on you. You could probably swap one of them out, like let's say a Randuin's out for a Warmogs if you're just going for pure stat efficiency, but I like this combo because it does make auto-attacking you much, much harder. So you have the Face of the Mountain, which is just, you know, pure health. You build that as early as you can. You try to rush your Frozen Heart because that's where most of your CDR is going to come from. And you have your Locket of the Iron Salami. So the way I like to play this build is I rush the CDR first. So I would do something like Glacial Shroud, and then, what's the name of that? Kindle Gem, finishing the Frozen Heart, and then finishing the Face of the Mountain, and then buying another Kindle Gem. Because what that effectively does is you have 20, 10, 10 CDR. So you've maxed out on CDR at that point. The goal of most support builds is to max out on CDR, because as a support, you're only as useful as having your spells up. for almost every single support. That applies to everyone. So what this build does is if you go that build order of Kindle Gem, Glacial Shroud, finishing your Frozen Heart, finishing your Face of the Mountain, and then buying the other Kindle Gem for Locket, what you're doing is you're maxing out on CDR early in the game. So that just allows you to be more useful. So if you're ever wondering why support builds will tell you to build certain things first, most of the time those things will have CDR in them. So there's no big secret. That's just the way it is. Okay, so the next build I'm going to talk about is what I like to call the Utility Mage. So the idea behind the Utility Mage is you're building these team auras, right? And you want to be as useful as possible while still being a mage. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple tools you can employ. So first off, one of the reasons you go utility build is because you just have less gold. So if you want AP and you don't have a lot of gold, Magi's is basically the item. So the way this build would work is you're going to build your Frostfang, and then you're immediately going to build your Magi's when you get your Moby Boots. And at some point you're going to buy your Sightstone. This is just the final build, so it has a Ruby Sightstone. And another way that people do this build is they just rush a Morellonomicon, because in lane, Morellonomicon is really strong against heal supports. So if you rush a Morellonomicon, you're effectively cutting the healing of the other team down by half. And it only applies below 40%, but that still makes a huge difference in a 2v2. So that's the whole idea of the utility. Every item except for Magi's in this build has utility. And even Magi's has utility because it's allowing you more AP for your buck. So people who would go this build, or champions rather, are Lulu, Janna, Soraka, Nami could go this build conceivably because Nami does fairly well with AP. Did I say Janna already? I think I said Janna. Yeah. So any of the utility mages, Zyra could probably go this build. Vel'Koz could go this build, but I don't really recommend it. I think he's better off with the full DPS build because he's a carry support. He's not really anything else. Although you can build whatever you want, he has very good base scaling because of his passive. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the full utility build, as I like to call it. So this build is full aura. Pretty much everything gives an aura except for Crucible. And there's not much else to say. I've discussed most of the items. Talisman is really good in team fights. Frozen Heart is also really good in team fights. This is more of a tanky, durable aura build. It's good to go if your team is just in need of peel and just needs someone to play incredibly backline-ish. Because this build doesn't make you personally extremely tanky, it just makes you very good at peeling for your team. So there's that. The next build I want to talk about is the utility tank. So this is kind of my go-to build for Thresh and Braum, and also Leona. I just think that this build it gives you the highest capacity to engage and then peel, because a support isn't like a regular tank. A support doesn't really do damage, so once they engage, they want to peel back to the backline. So because you want to peel back, even if you're playing Leona or something, you want to have the tools to peel for your AD carry. So Crucible is just the best peeling tool. It's the best peeling tool in the game for support because it allows you to remove CC. And Face of the Mountain does an incredible amount of shielding, actually, and I think it shields for more depending on the total AD and AP. Yeah, it does. So it shields for more the more fed your carry is, so that's pretty exciting. And then Randuin's just allows you to peel further with the slow, and this is just a very, very utility-focused build. And you'll notice that the build goes way over the CDR cap. We have Face of the Mountain, which is 10, Mikhail's Crucible, which is 10, Locket, which is 10, and Ionian Boots, which is 15. So altogether that equals 45% CDR, and the CDR cap is actually 40%. So the reason I go over the CDR cap is because all support builds are bound by wanting to hit max CDR. So if you hit max CDR earlier in the game as opposed to later, you're more useful. So the way this build works is a lot like that other build, except what you do is you buy the Kindle Gem from Face of the Mountain and Ionian Boots, and that puts you at 25% CDR without Runes and Masteries, and then you finish your Face of the Mountain, buy another Kindle Gem. Always try to get 40% CDR before finishing items. And remember, Kindle Gem has the unique passive 10% CDR. You can't just go and buy 2 or 3 Kindle Gems, because that's not the way things work. So yeah, keep those things in mind. Utility builds revolve around auras and item actives. You can go a utility build while still being a mage or a tank or a just pure support, which is the full utility build. And the last thing I wanted to do was talk about wildcard items. Wildcard meaning items that I haven't really experimented a ton with, but I know are good. The first one is Righteous Glory. So Righteous Glory basically acts the way the old Shurelya's does. It gives everyone movement speed similar to Talisman, and it fits more in line with the utility tank build, I would say. In fact, let me just drop this into the build in case anyone decides they want to build it. So this is what I would call a utility tank item, and all it does is give you a way of getting the Talisman active, but as a tank. And also, the other cool thing about it is it slows at the end of the movement speed buff. So it works as if you have a Talisman plus a Randuin's, which is really cool. And Ohm-Wrecker is really good if you're absolutely stomping, because it'll buff turrets. And it also protects your turrets, I believe now. Like, it'll buff your own turrets, which is really cool. You can use Ohm-Wrecker on your own thing if you're getting sieged. So I don't know. Does Ohm-Wrecker justify buying itself if you're being sieged against, because it can prevent a siege? I don't know, because I've never seen it used that way. But it's definitely one of those items where if you experiment with it, you find a niche within your playstyle for building it. It's worth it. So yeah. And the last one is ZZ Rot Portal, or ZZ Top Portal, as Donkey calls it. And this item is basically worthless. It's completely worthless. But I think over time, and as it gets buffed, eventually throughout the course of Season 5, it's going to be a good item for supports to pick up, because all it does is spawn little voidlings that chase down the lane. And it's really cool. It gives magic resist and armor, which almost nothing does. And it scales off your own tankiness. So I would say this item would fit. Actually, all of these items really fit into the utility tank role. So I'm just going to go ahead and add them. And yeah. So that was pretty much everything I had planned for this discussion. I'm going to do another discussion on support runes, because runes as a support justify their own discussion. There's so many different rune combinations you can go, and they're all viable depending on the situation. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.